and welcome back to Mastering Qt. Every few episodes, we're going to be creating a new application that's going to test our knowledge and build on top of the foundation we have set from prior lessons. In today's episode, we will be creating a basic calculator. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Our CMake list for this project is going to require a few changes. We are going to be extending our code base into a header file, CPP file, and a UI file. The UI file is going to allow a designed user interface to be accessed and implemented within our app. Since we are implementing some new files, we need to include some CMake calls that will pre-process and configure the files for us. Now that we have a blank project, we can go ahead and create our source files and interface files. Let's go ahead and include some of the Q objects we are going to be utilizing in our header. Follow along as I set up the calculator class and its member variables. After this, we are going to dive into the UI file. Now that the framework is set up for our class, we can instantiate an instance in our main. Now if we try to build and run our app, we are going to come across an error regarding our new calculator class. We can see in the output that the calculator.ui is not valid. If we go ahead and open up that file, we can see that there's nothing present. With your Qt installation, you are provided with Qt Designer. Go ahead and open this up. Qt Designer is going to allow us to modify and set up our user interface to look and function how we want. Once you create a new widget, you may need to overwrite the existing calculator.ui file. If we take a look back in Visual Studio, we can see that the UI file is now updated with content. Since we've created a custom widget, we will need to update a couple of parameters in our UI file to inherit from the calculator class. With these changes, we can now start designing our UI file. Go ahead and get started by adding a vertical box layout to our window. Next, we can add a label so we can see something on the screen. In Qt Designer, depending on what QObject you have selected, there's going to be a property editor on the side. It displays all the possible parameters and such the user can modify and tweak. This will be very helpful. Go ahead and try out a couple of the features. Let's go ahead and center a line to make our window look more appealing. Next, we can go ahead and add a Q line edit to our window. Make sure to add it in the vertical layout. This is going to be where our calculator displays the output. Don't forget to name your QObjects descriptively so you know what the purpose is once we start coding. We can go ahead and put a temporary value in the output line edit. Then let's center the text like we did with the label. Now that we have the output window and title displaying, we can start setting up the layout of the calculator. The basic calculator is going to have values 0 to 9. Let's go ahead and add all the push buttons in the layout. Now with the desired layout, we can group together the buttons we want into their own layouts. Let's go ahead and set them into a horizontal layout. I'm going to add some horizontal spacers to make the button labeled 0 stay the same size and in the same position. Then let's add all these buttons to a vertical layout. Now that we have all the numbers in a layout, we need to start numbering them. Next, we want to add the 6 basic functionality buttons to the calculator. These include clear, calculate or equals, addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication. Let's group these together so they all stay the same size. We can go ahead and add all the number buttons to the vertical layout we have above. Next, we need to go through all the buttons and give them a descriptive name for later use. Let's finish our layout off by right-clicking in the blank space and giving the parent window a generic horizontal layout. After this, we can resize the window to desired size. Everything should be building and will now display the user interface we have designed once ran. Let's hop back into Qt Designer and implement something that's going to help us in the long run. We're going to add all of our function buttons to a button group, and then all of our value buttons to a button group as well. This will translate into our source code and make determining the user input a lot easier and more efficient. This will be the last thing we implement in our user interface file. Now we can hop back into our source code and start setting the calculator up for functionality. First, we are going to want to initialize the member variable operand, because that's going to be our indicator on what needs to occur within our code. In the previous episode, we introduced setting up signals and slots, so if you missed that, feel free to go review it. With our new UI file, we are going to be able to access all the components within it. The Q buttons, the layouts, the push button group. In this case, we'll need to implement a slot within our class for the button presses, number buttons, and function buttons. Our connect statement will hook up everything and direct it to the slot we want executed. Once we create the slot, we can now set a breakpoint to test all of our buttons to make sure they are hooked up correctly. We can now move forward with setting up the logic for reading in user inputs from our calculator. As you can see, the calculator isn't functioning exactly how we want. We're going to need to clear the output line edit so that the text matches what we are inputting. This can be done in the code and in the UI file as shown. Great, now it functions how we would expect. Let's move on to the logic. We can start with the simplest button logic, and that will be the equals and clear buttons. Clear is going to clear our vector of values, our operand, and our output line edit. Next, let's figure out how to read in the operands. We first want to make some checks to verify an operand is able to be input. That means we have a value already present and want to calculate with that number. We then want to determine which calculation to use. When an operand is pressed, we want to add the current value to our vector of values. We can do this by taking the output line edit text and converting it to a double. Let's go ahead and implement the functionality for the addition portion of our calculator. Once this is created, we will have a basis to replicate for the others. There are a few things we will need to keep track of. First is going to be storing the constant we are including in the equation. Then we're going to display the operator in the output line and store the operand. Now you'll be able to see anytime you're inputting the plus operator, it displays in the output line edit. Now that we have the addition portion fully completed, we can translate it into the execute function, which is going to handle all the calculations and update the output. Now that all the code is finished, we have a fully functioning calculator. Go ahead and give it a try. I hope this video was helpful in building on top of your Qt foundation and has displayed some of the amazing capabilities Qt has to offer. As we progress into the series, we will dive deeper into the versatility and power of this framework. This is going to wrap up episode 3 of Mastering Qt. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you want more of this content. With that being said, see you in the next one.